Yes, viewers, your eyes do not deceive you. Well, it's not the first time I've deviated from doing the usual gaming content, as I did a review of Coldplay's third album, X and Y, for an April Fool's Day joke, and I also did 2 movie reviews in the past, with one of them not even being related to video games at all. So the rule of the SKG review show from here on out is anything goes. Sure, I would likely stick with gaming content the majority of the time, but the truth is that I am just like you. My primary interest may be gaming, but there are many other things I'm into. So much so that going from the SideQuest Gamer to now just rebranding it as the SQG Review Show was definitely the best decision I've made. It's not just some fancy rebrand to add some nonsensical continuity to the show, because the biggest mistake a channel can make is limiting itself with either brand association or just like having gamer or animation in the channel. Sure, sticking with one medium does work for some people, but not for me anymore. For example, I want to talk about the Star Wars movies, Star Wars TV shows, anything Star Wars related that's not just gaming related. That way, I don't spend great portions of my licensed game Star Wars reviews talking about things that I could have done in a separate video entirely, such as my opinions on movies and TV shows, and even the Expanded Universe comics. I did briefly roast Dark Empire in that one video I did for Star Wars Dark Forces. So while my channel will mainly be focused on gaming related content, reviews on movies, or in this case a TV show micro-series, should be expected to pop up every now and then. Hello everyone, welcome to the Season 7 premiere. As always, I am your host, Alec Card, the Psyquestian Gentleman, and today we'll be looking at Star Wars Clone Wars. No, not that Star Wars Clone Wars, because there's like 7 seasons in that, and I really like that show, but it's not a priority at the moment, so no, I'm talking about the original 2003 micro-series.
The Clone Wars have begun.
In this time of need, why do we hold back the Chosen One?
Whether or not he is the Chosen One is still to be determined.
As master and apprentice struggle with the dark side.
You're no Qui-Gon Jinn.
More and more systems join Count Dooku's army,
The city is under attack.
leaving the Jedi Knights caught between the Separatist forces and a republic that is slowly becoming an empire.
Now is the time to launch our final operation.
Let's end this battle, Commander.
We have to go! Now!
Defend the city, we must.
I won't fail you. Don't fail yourself.
The Jedi shall fall.
Toonami presents the Emmy-winning micro-series all in one shot. Star Wars Clone Wars, Volumes 1 and 2, next Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. Impressive, most impressive.
May the Force be with you.
Only Toonami.
Yes, Star Wars Clone Wars. This micro-series spanned 3 years from 2003 to 2005, meaning in between the releases of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. This very micro-series got a lot of advertising back on Cartoon Network, and even got all 3 seasons released on 2 DVD volumes that, for some reason, are now a bit of a rarity. And that honestly sucks, because I remember seeing it go for like $7 each on a clearance rack in Best Buy when I was 13 years old. Hell, I had $50 on me for my birthday, but me being an animation snob who looked down on it because if the character designs were slightly off, I refused to watch it regardless of its quality. I instead spent my money on such classic video games like Namco Museum 50th Anniversary, Lego Star Wars, and Spider-Man 1 the movie license game. I mean, those games aren't bad, don't get me wrong, but I really wish I had those DVDs. Yeah, hindsight really does sting like a swarm of giant hornets. What was I thinking back then? But anyways, this micro-series is lesser known than the CG counterpart because of lack of availability for the longest time. Avid Cartoon Network fans know about this, and so do Star Wars fans, but the distribution of it has made it somewhat obscure until Disney Plus added to it on their service in 2021. And you know something? Back then, before the sequel trilogy came out, everyone who has seen the 2D Clone Wars series often called it the best thing the prequel era of Star Wars has ever done. And this was before people were giving the prequel movies a second chance after the sequel trilogy has come out and disappointed many. I heard some even go as far as to say it's even better than the already great CG series. And who can honestly blame them? Imagine Samurai Jack meets Star Wars. Well, for me personally, Samurai Jack is one of my favorite animated series of all time, and so when I hear that the creator Genndy Tartakovsky, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, worked on this, oh man, the Jedi action has never, ever looked more thrilling. Not in the movies, not in the CG Clone Wars series, no. And you don't even have to wait until the show reaches its peak to see that, because unlike most action-oriented shows that take a few episodes to really get going with characterization and introducing us to all these main characters, no, we get full-blown larger-than-life action from the very first episode. Let's start off with Season 1, which did combine with Season 2 in the Volume 1 DVD just so they flow better as one feature presentation. But yeah, Season 1, it is off to a great start, I gotta say. The action-packed first episode is kind of an overview of the titular Clone Wars. We see clones landing their craft and engaging in battle with a separatist droid army. We see Jedi and clones do the same, but in different parts of the galaxy far, far away, where the war is taking place. It is definitely a spectacle fest right from the start, introducing the major players being Anakin and Obi-Wan, as well as important side characters such as Mace Windu, Luminara, Barriss Offee, Kit Fisto. Yeah, they get their own micro-episode. And of course, C-3PO is in this. Not to mention Palpatine and Dooku, who are leaders of the Warring Republic and Separatists respectively. It's definitely a lot to take in at first, so the first chapter feels more like an overview of what's to come, and the foreshadowing is even better with repeat viewings. I especially like the ending where the more reckless Jedi known as Anakin Skywalker flies away with Senator Padme Amidala sadly looking from a distance, kind of hinting at a romantic connection for those who are not aware of their previously established connection in the second movie. These micro-shorts do a really solid job reintroducing characters to a potential viewer who for some reason haven't seen the movies these shorts follow up on. Like, it reiterates that Anakin is Obi-Wan's more reckless apprentice, who may not be ready to lead the special forces against Dooku's army. Not to mention, throughout the series, it explains Anakin's relationship with Senator Padme Amidala. But thankfully everything is followed up upon, and dare I say with Anakin and Padme Amidala, this romantic subplot is done a lot better than in Attack of the Clones. Anyways, Obi-Wan and Anakin depart, and to quote Anakin from Revenge of the Sith, "This is where the fun begins." And that's exactly what the Obi-Wan-centric Moonalist arc is all about. We see ARC troopers struggle against the droid army at first, only for them to destroy a bunch of droids and even blow up a giant turret. Some of them get killed as they're kind of the cannon fodder of the series. Don't expect Clone Wars levels of individualism with these clones, as they're here for the viewers to follow, and even though you don't know them as characters, they do have some pretty badass moments. But they also have more vulnerable moments, like when facing against a sniper. It would be pretty boring if the good guys had everything go according to plan, but no, their crafts get shot down and a sniper takes out a lot of these clone troopers, so when the remainder of the clone platoon blows up the giant turret, it actually feels well earned, and that is how you depict a fictional conflict during times of war. Especially because these clones are established as not being superpowered, just heavily armed, but way more vulnerable than the superpowered Jedi Knights you see flying around. Which is what Chapter 4 returns to, the perspective of Obi-Wan, since now that the Republic is pushing through the enemy forces, the Separatist banking clan members send Dirge out to the battlefield alongside these Lancer droids, and oh man, this is where the Clone Wars shows how to make a threat to Obi-Wan as well as the clones. And he's not even a Jedi or a Sith, because now the tides have turned, as even though the most powerful Republic vehicles are no match for Dirge, and this arc doesn't finish until Chapter 8, where the Republic strikes back with their own Lancers, while Obi-Wan realizes just how powerful Dirge really is. Finally, an enemy that cannot be easily killed by explosives or stab wounds or even dismemberment. Chapters 8 and 9 really stick the landing by having this giant threat deal with Obi-Wan with not just brawn, but also cunning with his arsenal of weaponry. And man, he's so gross when he's no longer having armor. Just look how nasty they are, taking out clones and even absorbing Kenobi, but thanks to electricity and Kenobi slicing him from the inside, it just comes to a gross but satisfying ending. I just love the diversity of the action with the clones figuring out what works and what doesn't when it comes to winning the battle. It's not just them guns a-blazing. The shots of them coming down on zip lines, riding speeders, as well as Kenobi using his plethora of Jedi skills, makes this arc an extremely fun viewing experience. But that doesn't mean the other episodes skimp out. Due to featuring multiple characters simultaneously with crossfades, the 3-minute episodes have to focus on one character at a time. Like with Kit Fisto's episode in the Battle of Mon Calamari, this establishes what the war can do to planets, like how the two races of the Mon Calamari side with opposing forces. I like how it's underwater, as the action can change to accompany underwater physics, like for example, what Jedi Knights can do with the Force, as well as how the enemies fight underwater with these tanks. My only issue is how this conflict is shown in one episode instead of more. Like, it's fun watching Kit and the Calamari people collaborate to take down this giant underwater tank, but still. I definitely think the 3D Clone Wars version is better, even if it delves more into the slower-paced politics of the Mon Cala people. For this, I just want to see what happens to the Quarren people after losing the battle. Why not show them surrendering or even reconciling with the Calamari people? And for that, it's probably my least favorite micro episode, even if it was nearly as good as the others for the dynamic action alone. Maybe it's because it doesn't have much impact on Season 1 and beyond, other than finishing the battle depicted in the first chapter. But Chapters 6 and 7 are great for establishing who the villains of the Clone Wars are, and how it'll tie into Chapter 10 later on. We meet Asajj Ventress, who claims to be Sith, but Count Dooku shoots that idea down despite her taking down all these gladiators. Unlike the later 3D Clone Wars series that fleshes her out as a character beyond just her being a dark side user, in the 2D Clone Wars here, there's not much to her in terms of character other than that, making her pretty two-dimensional, but we really don't need a third dimension for an action-focused micro-series. Is she powerful? Yes. She can kill these beasts without breaking much of a sweat and proves her worth to Dooku, but Dooku is still more experienced and powerful as a Sith warrior, as shown in Chapter 8, mirroring Obi-Wan and Anakin's dynamic quite a bit. I mean, Count Dooku is very wise and adept in the dark side of the Force, as is Obi-Wan is with the light side. What else do they have in common? Their apprentices are very skilled, but have that damning character flaw of being reckless, which makes their battle in Chapter 10, 11, and 17 the highlights of the series. Speaking of which, Chapter 10 goes back to Anakin fighting the Separatists in orbit around Moonalist, before he pursues Asajj Ventress. It's pretty solid, but imagine waiting a whole year to find out what happens next. You see, that's the thing about Season 1. While Moonalist and Mon Calamari's battles are great all around, the season is a bit too open-ended, and the fact that audiences originally had to wait a whole year for all that to continue must have been quite the wait, and not one I imagine people had a lot of patience for. I mean, now we take it for granted nowadays since all 3 seasons are available on streaming services, but back then, just imagine waiting that long for Season 2. Now, onto the superior second season. Season 2, which aired in 2004, is a much more enjoyable season for me because while the first 10 chapters were a good depiction of the Clone Wars, this is the point where all the things Season 1 introduced concludes for the most part, like with chapters 11 and 17. This concludes the Ventress arc, as not only do we see Anakin and Ventress hold their own in a dogfight, but also a tense battle on the ruins of Yavin 4. And here we get a glimpse of Anakin giving into his anger and defeating Ventress in battle after struggling so much throughout this episode. Chapter 17's atmosphere is incredible, like the small moment where they stare at each other after a game of cat and mouse, and when it starts raining and hearing it pour on their lightsabers, things get even more tense just waiting to see who will make the next move. This chapter also shows a more reckless side of Anakin Skywalker to someone more enraged and less childish as portrayed in the previous chapters. It's a step forward to seeing Anakin's maturity as a Jedi Knight, and when Asajj was defeated and presumably fell to her death, it felt like Anakin was definitely coming closer to the dark side of the Force. I did hear this particular chapter garner criticism for killing off one of the few significant female characters just to further a male character's growth, especially considering Season 2 and Season 3's new secondary antagonists only getting injured at the end and not killed off. And with the concept of fridging a female character, it's a bit of a tricky dilemma as to how to end things, as Asajj Ventress fits the super skilled assassin role in terms of secondary antagonism, and if Anakin Skywalker defeat her, having her fall to her death, but then the camera panned down to reveal she's alive the whole time, only for Season 3 not to follow that up, fans would most likely be confused as to why she didn't show up later on. Maybe giving her a moment to realize how Dooku was just using her, just as Palpatine was using Anakin, and just have it show that she was reading Anakin's mind. It would have given her ample reason to return to her ship and just fly away to a destination unknown, realizing how futile being a pawn for the Sith really is, and that could have concluded her arc in a way fitting for the series and the character, but also leaving her story open-ended enough for tie-in comics to follow up on. And while the Anakin Ventress battle was one of the main appeals of Season 2, the episodes in between the Anakin Ventress battle were great as well, like watching Mace Windu be a badass Jedi in the Battle of Dantooine while being watched by a farmer child in chapters 12 and 13 is quite intense, especially when this giant separatist vehicle leaves a giant hole in the ground, yet Windu still prevailed. The arrival of that ship was suspenseful, furthering the satisfaction of its defeat in the next chapter, and the farmer kid finally meeting the Jedi in a rather wholesome kind of ending. Sure, it's just a stylish action scene throughout the 2 episodes, but it does what the Moonless episodes do well, where the droids adapt to the battle by bringing in crazier tactics to the battlefield. And seeing it from the perspective of this farmer kid gives the audience a taste of the child's perspective of the war and why they would root for the Republic. It's an extra element that gives this episode more of an identity among the other action-oriented episodes, and the following 2 chapters also do this quite well. Hey kids from 2003, how would you like to learn how the Jedi make their lightsabers? I thought so. Here is an episode for you. The next 3 episodes takes place in the Jedi Temple of Ilum, where we see apprentice Barriss Offee construct her lightsaber with the Force while hearing the philosophy of her master, Luminara, showing how they relate the crystals to themselves. It's a nice, slower opening to introduce the audiences to these characters, as well as make the temple a location we're intrigued by. Hence why when it's attacked by these invisible droids leaving explosives all over the temple, this leads to an action-packed fight where even with their best efforts, they suffer a temporary defeat, which is honestly a nice change of pace, because despite the Jedi being as powerful as they are, they achieve a temporary victory until Yoda senses it and hilariously mind tricks Padme's bodyguard into making a detour to planet Ilum. The next 2 chapters shift perspective to them, as well as C-3PO and R2-D2, and can I just say how much I like seeing Padme hold her own despite being a politician? Yeah, she is vulnerable and isn't a part of the military, and she doesn't use the Force like the Jedi Knights, but her holding her own and risking her life to help Master Yoda rescue the 2 trapped Jedi in that temple, that just goes to show when writing about a mortal character, the most badass weapon is courage. And I especially like how amused she is by Yoda's mind trick, showing that she agrees but the bodyguard is an obstacle and he's all about protecting Padme Amidala, even though she cares more about others than her own safety. It just makes her extremely likable, and not just some humanitarian in name only that a lot of career politicians are. She's also very eager to get a piece of the action, even if it does conflict with Yoda's wishes, which he seems to understand. And if you like Yoda's battle scenes in the first chapter, Chapter 15 gives you even more of that, further showing that size matters not, young Padawan. Normally C-3PO and R2-D2 are paired up with C-3PO being the stuck-up coward who serves as the voice of reason to the other characters, and R2 is more willing to go along with the adventures and serves more of a utilitarian role, while the 2 droids work off each other for comedy. And while C-3PO can really annoy the hell out of me, even in the original trilogy, especially Empire Strikes Back.
Oh my! Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. No, please don't get up.
His metallic heart is in the right place and will accompany his friends to make sure they're alright, despite his objections and risking his own safety. He even helps protect Padme by serving as a decoy, which makes up for his lack of offensive capabilities. It does have some heavy action, but the last 2 chapters balance that out with more suspense-based action thanks to obscuring these droids in the blizzard. And the ending is a bit of a turning point, as apparently the Jedi wanted this temple to be a secret from the Separatist army, and now that it's found, Count Dooku knows where it is, which could really turn the tide of war. And given this is a place that Jedi make their lightsabers, this is bad news. So even though the heroes survived, they didn't completely win in the end. And with chapters 17 through 19 covered, it's time to cover what many consider to be the best episode of the entire micro-series, myself included. Chapter 20 is the highlight of the series because after it, the Clone Wars will change forever, and this very change even carries into the 3rd movie. The episode first ties up loose ends by showing the Republic arresting all the Separatists on Moonalist, and then we see Anakin return from Yavin 4 owning up to the fact his recklessness got him into a trap set up by the Separatists. He's still amused that he came back victorious, to Obi-Wan's annoyance, but regardless, he gets a distress signal from a bunch of Jedi pinned down by the droid army led by General Grievous. This is General Grievous's first ever appearance in any Star Wars media, with his film debut in Revenge of the Sith being 1 year after this season.
Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
And the build-up is terrifying, as the Jedi take cover in this wrecked craft. Sure, he threatens them with his only form of mercy being a warrior's death for them, but he's not just all bark and no bite. Why is he so beloved in this depiction, especially? It's mainly because he doesn't even send in his droids to do his dirty work. You hear mechanical legs coming in closer and closer, but not visible at all to the Jedi or even to the viewer. And then it stops. Holy crap, does the battle get better from here, as not only does he wield multiple lightsabers, but he's fighting them off effortlessly. Tartakovsky and company always know how to build up a tense action scene, and gives it a lot of payoff, and this episode is a perfect demonstration of that. The Jedi Knight known as Shaggy, yeah, he looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, displays a lot more anxiety than the other Jedi, and that ultimately leads to his end because he was not very mindful of his surroundings. So the Jedi aren't always as perfect as the series makes them out to be in some episodes, especially the earlier ones, but this is the turning point for the Jedi in this micro-series because from here on out, even the best of them aren't immune from death. General Grievous is methodical with his approach, using scare tactics and skill to take out these Jedi with relative ease. With all of his saber spins, acrobatics, and outright use of brute force, it comes as no surprise that he was able to defeat these Jedi, with Season 3 cutting to Yoda as soon as Grievous strikes at their last remaining Jedi. And this is the cliffhanger Season 2 leaves off on. Viewers wouldn't know if that last remaining Jedi was alive or dead back then. I really like this iteration of General Grievous, and it's a real shame that he was such a pushover in Revenge of the Sith. Like, that was such a waste of a cool character, but maybe he was overpowered in this depiction. I think the 3D Clone Wars version gave us the best of both worlds when it came to Grievous. Highly skilled and a hard opponent to match, but could get injured from time to time. So that's Season 2. I thought it was better than the first, but I can't help that the episodes would benefit from being longer and maybe utilize cross-phase to be kind of like Empire Strikes Back, where you see the multiple plot points kind of tie in together, like they're happening at the same time. And that, my friends, is exactly what Season 3 gives us. Longer episodes, and like Seasons 1 and 2, they're even better as a feature presentation than as standalone episodes. Season 3 premiered almost a week after Revenge of the Sith was released in theaters, and this season gives us longer, more in-depth chapters that ties into the movie. Like, why is General Grievous coughing? When did Anakin lose that braid and grew out his hair? And how the hell did Ki-Adi-Mundi survive Grievous's onslaught in one piece after it looked like he was about to be killed? Sure, this season is mostly self-contained, but Season 3 does progressively tie into Revenge of the Sith. Well, it did at least until Disney decided to make it non-canon, and with Season 7 of The Clone Wars out, now they have their version of events that took place before Revenge of the Sith, and it was probably my favorite season of that show, don't get me wrong. It was a lot of fun to watch. Even the lesser-like middle arc I found really compelling. But yeah, with General Grievous coughing throughout that series and sounding just like he did in the movie, I can see why the 2D series is no longer canon. But anyways, Chapter 21 picks up where 20 left off, with the ARC troopers shooting their way in to fight Grievous with their gunship, and rescuing the remaining Jedi, with half of them pretty much dead and the rest critically injured. It's a nice twist on their original dynamic, whereas the Jedi always saved the day when the clones desperately needed help. Now, the tables have turned with a pretty exciting gunfight as you would expect. But this episode also has the B and C plot involving Anakin secretly meeting with his wife Padme Amidala, and Obi-Wan reveals Anakin has been promoted to Jedi Knight and is no longer just a Padawan. And now we see that long wavy hair we all know and love. I just love that flash forward showing him finally achieve the maturity his master wanted him to have from the start, to now fighting alongside him as a colleague and an equal. But it's not easy, as he does get this long scar that concerns Padme when he returns presumably years later. This episode kind of feels like a repilot where the characters in the old show are now more mature, and it calls back to the beginning occasionally, but has more of a focus to the new status quo. What is the show's goal now that Anakin has become a Jedi Knight? The Clone Wars are still going on, Grievous and Dooku are still at large, and the last season showed Anakin gradually giving in to the dark side in his battle against Ventress. Chapter 22 amusingly shows Anakin and Obi-Wan's differences, with him eating worms and bugs without a problem and even quoting Jedi philosophy to justify it.
So uncivilized.
But he scouted ahead to find the droid base, and with Obi-Wan's more stealthful approach, they both succeeded in the mission without Anakin necessarily being a hindrance. I mean, he almost did, going head first, but they destroyed the shield generator, allowing the clones to attack. This season is a lot easier to talk about due to all 5 chapters having a serialized approach, rather than standalone episodes, as chapters 22 through 25 have Obi-Wan and Anakin go to Nelvaan in hopes of capturing Grievous. However, they only find the Separatists experimenting on the male villagers of this tribe, where only the women and children remain. This arc is really depressing for a number of reasons. I do like that Anakin is their ghost hand hero they prophesize in cave paintings, with even a clever dream sequence of animated cave paintings. I am a sucker for this kind of world building. Like, these cave paintings hint at Anakin's eventual turn to the dark side in the end of that dream sequence he experiences in that cave, and you see a bit of that turn to the dark side when, after fighting the Industrialists, he helps the unaugmented beast free his brethren from Separatist control, and Anakin outright kills this last Techno-Union member who tries to escape. This is really dark, as while he did deserve it, if I'm being honest, for ruining the lives of these villagers, the Jedi frown upon that even within this series. It kind of makes sense, as the main reason why this arc is sad is that the warriors are stuck to their mutated state, with most losing a hand after having it replaced with a cannon. It does end on a high note with Obi-Wan assuring Anakin that they'll be able to go back to their daily lives as long as they accept themselves, which visibly hits Anakin hard as he struggled to accept how close he is to the dark side, as seen after removing the crystal and going on a rampage. But as for the other plot lines, there's a few more to go over, with one of them showing the beginning of the Battle of Kashyyyk, the home planet of the fan-favorite Wookiees, and this battle in space featuring the Jedi with the horns. All of it is a good half-minute worth of solid action, and doesn't seem any different than other action-heavy episodes. There's also the C-plot where Grievous, Dooku, and their leader, the mysterious Darth Sidious, who orchestrated the entire Clone Wars for his own gains, has them finally attack the Republic capital of the world of Coruscant. I liked how this season shows more of Grievous's personality by explaining his love for collecting the lightsabers of Jedi he killed, to which Count Dooku dismisses for his materialism. It goes to show even Grievous isn't immune from the Count's harsh criticisms, and despite Grievous being a near-perfect warrior, he does have some character flaws that hold him back from ranking higher than Dooku. It's something that ties into the third prequel movie, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that iconic line from Revenge of the Sith was added to the Clone Wars Grievous. But if you like Grievous, you'll get a multi-part follow-up of that, as he apparently kidnapped the Chancellor with the help of the Magna Guard droids that really give the Jedi a hard time. I love the race stakes and how this chase sequence battle goes, from Grievous running down the building next to the Jedi and clone in the elevator, or on top of an escaping vehicle. Wait a minute. Did that clone just launch that rocket inside of an elevator? But like last time, they don't win. Despite their best efforts, Grievous escapes with the Chancellor, with Shaak Ti only realizing that Grievous waited for the separated Jedi at the end of the tunnel and realizes it's too late after the Magna Guards abruptly back away. It is really cool seeing Mace Windu crush Grievous's chest with the Force, explaining why he coughs often in Revenge of the Sith when Star Wars Legends material such as this was canon. And with this show no longer being canon, I can honestly now see why the Star Wars Legends timeline, aka the original expanded universe, meant so much to the fan base. Like, I can understand decanonizing the entire New Republic era because it would contradict their episodes 7 through 9 which were in production, but at the same time, decanonizing everything is a bit of a brash move on Lucasfilm's part. So, the micro-series ends with Obi-Wan and Anakin learning of the Chancellor's capture and takes Starfighters up to the Battle of Coruscant, which ends right before the beginning of the Revenge of the Sith. And when hearing the Star Wars credits theme, I was really satisfied with this original Clone Wars series. In my honest opinion, if you combine them into one feature-length presentation, it is by far the best of the prequels era, even with the 3D Clone Wars being out. It even outdoes Revenge of the Sith, and that is by far my favorite of the prequel movies. It is nice to see that despite the obscurity, it is now gaining the legacy it deserves, being something even better than we remembered. This is honestly how the Clone Wars should have been in some ways, and while Seasons 1 and 2 had all the action battle scenarios to keep us at the edge of our seat, Season 3 went even further with these ideas by adding in a sense of loss at times, and going even further with the character growth of Anakin Skywalker. From the stylistic dynamic action scenes to the use of suspense and the build-up to these action scenes, with brief but meaningful character moments, the 2D Clone Wars is easily one of the best things the franchise ever did. And the fact that distribution hasn't done a good job re-releasing this series is frankly a bit frustrating as a fan, especially with the rise of DVD prices. So yeah, 2D Clone Wars is frickin' great. I like it even more than the CG show, which I also really like, so that should say something. However, it only gives me almost everything I want. While I definitely prefer it over the 3D series, it is much shorter than even the last season of that series, because while it was great to see Anakin develop as a character in this series, the later one gives us more than Anakin's journey to get invested in. We can get invested in Obi-Wan's journey, we can also get invested in Ahsoka Tano's journey, and we can even get invested in Asajj Ventress's growth as a character from villain to anti-hero of sorts. And the later series even gives humanity to the clones, with popular characters such as Captain Rex. It also didn't always make Obi-Wan Kenobi this ideal Jedi that can do no wrong. And because there's 133 20-minute episodes to go off of, everyone of significance to the Clone Wars gets a chance to grow as characters. Hell, there was even a few episodes where Jar Jar Binks was actually pretty cool. And the 3D Clone Wars is definitely a lot more thematically rich, where good guys turn bad, bad guys turn less bad. Old enemies return, new enemies arise, the Separatists are treated as the bad guys until they show what the Senators are like and how they were tricked into supporting someone like Dooku. Because let's face it, the Republic did not always have a clean track record. The 2008 series even shows the damning flaws of not just the Jedi, but also the entire Republic as well. Not that the Separatists are any better, no, they are arguably worse, but the later series has the benefit of time to establish the things I appreciate the most in the Clone Wars era. Even if the action isn't nearly as exciting, but still pretty exciting nonetheless, especially in the later seasons. But the 2003 series gave us Samurai Jack styled action in the Star Wars universe with a plot that is fast paced and never has a dull moment, so for that it has a lot of my respect, and also goes to show why Genndy Tartakovsky is one of my favorite animation directors of all time. So for those with a Disney Plus account, do yourself a favor and give this show a watch. This was originally going to be uploaded on May 4th, aka Star Wars Day, but then I was going to do later in May, but again, life got in the way, so I decided to shelve those plans and it'll be uploaded whenever it's uploaded. So either way, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and may the Force be with you, young Padawan.
As she is that what her work fits comments.
Holy crap, I'm metal as f now.